calling in from I guess it's parts known. It's calling in from Seattle. I mean, I know where he's calling in from. So we'll see what's going on. It is time to discuss what's going on in Major League Soccer with our buddy, Niko Moreno. There he is. Look at you.
Hey, what's going on, John? I
Hey,
was trying to figure out
you
the
got it.
restream.
You got it, bro. You're good to go. It's there. It's all there. This is us in 2025. We are now restreaming, and it's always good to see what's going on. We had breaking news that happened in the previous half hour. Philadelphia has a new head coach, and it is Bradley Carnell, who is the new head coach for Philadelphia Union. Jim Curtin, obviously, they had the disagreement of disagreements, Ernst Tanner, Jim Curtin et al. And so now Bradley Carnell, who was let go by all caps, St. Louis City SC, is now the new head coach in Philly. Now that it's 38 minutes old, what do you think?
I think it makes sense. This was long time rumored. It is a move that when I first heard of it, I thought it fit. I thought that if you were, there was two ways that Philadelphia could have gone. They could have gone with the academy guy, the guy that knows the culture, the guy that was going to do same as it's been, the guy that was going to continue to play with that developmental component that has made Philadelphia the club that they are, or they could have gone with someone else, a coach that had been proven, that had been successful doing a lot with a little, that has a very high pressure style that could maybe change a little bit of what the Philadelphia Union have been over the last 10 years, decade. And so I didn't think it was a bad move. If anything, the Philadelphia Union have showed us that they are not willing to get out there and break the checkbook and get the big splash signings. So why not bring a guy like Carnell that with St. Louis City was so successful, creating a system, providing that component of it's not about the individual play, it's about the collective, taking the league by storm. When he first got into the league, someone that is very well regarded in Europe as well, that knows and understands the network and can maybe even do a little bit of recruiting for you. I think that it makes sense for Philadelphia Union. I think he's going to be successful there.
Well,
Is he going to be as successful as his last head coach in Curtains? I'm not really sure about that. I think that's some big shoes to fill because of everything that Curtin did for the Philadelphia Union. But I think it fits.
when you look at what happened in St. Louis with Bradley Carnell, I've the analogy that I gave is that St. Louis was like the rookie that got the call up from AAA. Literally, the Rainiers made the call up, and it's this pitcher that's lights out in AAA comes up for his first start there, and in little Soto Mojo going. He goes for his first start. He goes 6+, maybe gives up an earned run, and the league is like, "Wow, okay, this guy's great." But he goes through the league first time. He's doing okay. He's maybe 5-2, an ERA of 2.5. But the second time through the league, everybody's got a book on him, and he gets dinged around a little bit. And I thought that that's what happened to him in St. Louis. And St. Louis pulled the trigger on Carnell, and they're just like, "Nope, you're out the door." And you see what's going on in St. Louis right now. I think that St. Louis pulled the trigger too quick, and they
I
weren't
did.
they weren't patient with Carnell in year number 2. And you see what happened.
Yeah, I would agree because I mean there was a fluctuation of injuries, of change of personnel, of players that St. Louis himself didn't really replace. Again, when you have a guy that has a specific system and certain guys are taken away from that system, it creates an issue. Now, does that happen to him? I think it's lesson learned in St. Louis, and he needs to be a lot more assertive than perhaps he was on that second season with St. Louis. There was also some reporting about some maybe issues with certain players. So, can you learn from that? Definitely. I just think that there is a foundation and a intellectual strategic component from Carnell that I think can definitely be useful in Philadelphia. But to your point, what does happen when things get a little bit harder and when you start getting some losses and when there's a book out on you and you got to start deviating from the specific way you were winning games, that remains to be seen. But in terms of Carnell, as of what I seen from afar, because I'm not going to say that I think I was part of a couple of his press conferences, but that was about it.
Yeah.
I think that he makes sense, and I think that he fits. But it's going to be one that Philadelphia, if they hired him, I really do hope that they are willing to give him at least 3 years to figure out his system, how to implement it, how to bring it in. It's just not going to be a magic wand. Philadelphia is going to be top of the East. I don't think that's going to happen specifically with that roster. So it's going to take some time.
Well, and at the same time, it's a situation where St. Louis and Luch Pfannenstiel and that front office, they didn't break the bank. Let's put it that way. They were like, okay, I've got a dude. I know what the system that I want. Here's the system, and here's a guy that I know I can get when I can bring these guys in. In Philadelphia, Carnell's going to be under the same kind of constraints. It's like, okay, bruh, here's what you got, and we're not breaking the bank. We might drop seven figures occasionally on a guy, like a Michael Ua or what have you. But this is not going to be something where Bradley Carnell is going to walk in the door and Tanner and Sugarman and the ownership group are going to sit there and go, you know what? We're going to go over to the Federal Reserve and we're just going to crack it open. And here you go. This is going to be, again, it's going to be for Carnell round 2 of football on a budget.
Yeah. And you got to add the part of Carnell coming into a situation where maybe can figure out how good he can develop certain players, because that's what the Philadelphia Union does. So how much time goes into going over their academies, their second team? What are the young guys coming through? How are you going to replace some of the talent that's leaving this year? I mean, all of that is going to be very slow process because of everything you just said. And how do I use this newfound resource from Philadelphia that you didn't have in St. Louis, and now maybe you get to exploit that a little bit. So there's going to be a learning curve, but if all in all, Carnell can find the right guys to fit his system, I think it's going to be at least interesting to watch, interesting to see. I don't. I don't know if it's going to be an easy start, because I actually do think that there might be some clashing ideologies with the way he ran his team in St. Louis,
Yeah.
unless he's going to come in and just change it up on us. And he has decided to move completely away from what he did with St. Louis and, provide us with a brand new playbook. But that's going to be the part where there's going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be a lot of static. It's going to take some calibrating, and it's not going to be smooth.
So then let me ask it this way. Carnell came from the Red Bulls way. He was in the Red Bull system. Pfannenstiel dug it, brought him into St. Louis. And so it was kind of like Red Bullsian light, maybe. Well,
Yep.
it was, maybe like a B plus or a, B minus Red Bulls playing in St. Louis. How do you think Red Bulls light integrates with what we saw in Philly with that personnel, with what Jim Curtin did, knowing that you do have young guys coming up through the system, with Union 2, et cetera. You've got a lot of the young guys, and you have a front office that basically had a situation in the draft where they're like, we're it's like the girl, when you're in high school. I'm just not that much into you, and so you break up with her. The union broke up with the draft, called Colorado and was like, "Are you interested? It's like, yeah, do you like this girl?" And Colorado's like, "Yeah, we kind of do." Well, okay, what's it worth? Just tell you what, just go ahead. You can start dating her. Everything's fine. You traded 8 picks in 3 years to Colorado. That's it. You're done with the draft for 3 years. You are either confident that your academy is going to get you through this, or you've lost your blanking mind, or both.
Yeah.
And you're confident that Union 2 is going to help you through this, because in free agency, how do you think, with all of the old dudes leaving or still hanging around, maybe running it back a year longer than they should have, how do you see this blending with the guys that are there, Red Bulls light, Carnell, no draft picks, and an academy? How are you blending all of this information together?
Yeah, no, that part is where the static is gonna come from, right? Because good luck trying to get Gosdog and Ura to provide you a top pressing style where whenever the teams are coming out of the back, they're going to be your first defenders and they're going to press and they're going to be all over the pitch because that's not their game, right? Even though they might not be old, but that's just not their style. Gosdog is not the guy that you're going to be thinking immediately he's going to be defensively sound. Your midfield's a little bit old. You have lost some components in the back. So I don't think it. I don't think you're going to see the a Red Bulls system right off the bat because you're going to need to get a new personnel for it. But at the end of the day, that's when I think he's going to be obligated to switch up a little bit of the playbook. And maybe you're high press, but maybe you don't do it all the time and you are very precise and you take in consideration maybe at times playing in a mid block. I think that there's going to be some diversions of what he did with San Luis because of what you just said. When you look at this roster and you think, is this a Red Bull styles system roster? I mean, no, absolutely not. There's some good players that maybe I think Jesus Bueno could do a lot of Red Bullish things in the midfield. I think that here and there you might be able to find something that's gonna fit what that Red Bull system is, but I don't think that's what Carnell is going to immediately come in and do because of everything you just mentioned and what we said to start off this whole news breaking. It's going to be interesting how a guy like Carnell is going to have to use a huge resource he hasn't had before in an academy, but that is never a proven, sure, sustainable thing if you don't understand it. And yes, there are guys that are going to walk him through it, and they're going to be able to say, "Hey, these are the guys that we've been watching," and that's no problem. That's anyone can walk in and get that information given, but there is that sense of can you develop them? Can you get them bought in? Which is what you did in San Luis. This is the whole new club. This is a club that has an identity, a system, a curriculum that you're not going to be able to just come in and just it's blank. It's a blank canvas, and I'm going to put together my system. I remember Ezra Hendrickson when he was with Chicago and he ultimately failed there. He said something that I'll always remember. He said it's a lot harder to get to a club, put a wrecking ball through everything that the team understands, knows, concepts, and rebuild it, then come into a club that is an empty canvas and you can just go ahead and put it together. So that's going to be the challenges that Cornell's going to face there in Philadelphia.
Okay, now next piece of news is twofold, and it's stuff that you have been very, very busy keeping an eye on. I want to go a step at a time. New Year's Eve, you were told that the Albert Rusnák contract over the line, signed and waiting to be announced. You didn't have numbers New Year's Eve. Expected to be a multi-year DP contract for the club's 2024 MVP? Has there been any update now that we have turned the calendar to 2025?
No, not yet. I expect it to be a 2-1. 2-year one option. It is going to be a DP deal with a bigger salary than last year. He's going to get a bump in pay. In many ways, there are going to be some factors and some of those compensations that would have to hit for certain numbers to get even bigger. But at the end of the day, we knew this was going to happen, and it should surprise no one that the Seattle Sounders, understanding their situation, they were not going to just, and we kind of mentioned this here. Uh, they were not going to let him walk too far out the dealership. They were not going to allow him to just get too far away. I mean, they were going to call his bluff. They're going to say, hey, this is the money we have. But the reason why Albert had the leverage is because he understands that it takes a lot more money to pay a Cam, a guy that's going to come into Seattle and be another designated player, between the transfer fee that it would take for you to come and get him, plus his salary, plus the unknown factor of whether a new creative midfielder is going to come in and fit and not have to go through the adaptation of MLS. So he had the leverage, and that's what you end up paying him. I understand why people get frustrated with it. I've heard a lot of people that do not like Albert Rusnák being brought back as a DP because he's not the shiny new object. And he really isn't a player that, in my opinion, can be compared with Lorero. And I get that, right? They're two different players. I see Albert Rusnák more as a game manager, as a guy that's going to be your safe move in that position. But is he ultimately pushing your ceiling extremely high? He's not. But because of everything that Seattle has to play for in 2025, it makes sense to just keep continuity to a guy that had 30 goal contributions, that has the respect of the locker room, that might not be a game breaker, but he is a game amplifier. When you know that you're getting other pieces like Ferreira, like hopefully a Jordan Morris that's going to be at a better level than he was this year, or a sustainable level as he was this year. So that's why you keep Albert Rusnák. Is it sexy? Absolutely not. Is it safe? Yes. Are you guys allowed to be frustrated with the fact that that's the big news for the Seattle Sounders, is re-signing a guy like Albert Rusnák? That's your prerogative. But at the end of the day, to me, it's a smart move. And today, with, and I think we'll touch on it obviously here in a couple of minutes, with Ferreira and potentially Arriola, Seattle's better today than they were at the end of 2024.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how better they are, which got me to stage 2 of this conversation, and it has to do with. And by the way, Rusnák last year made complete compensation just a little over 2.2. Same for Jesus Ferreira, but right now, agreement according to folks, Jesus Ferreira to Seattle in exchange for $2 million in Garber bucks, an international roster spot, and Leo Chu. Leo Chu last season, his salary on the books I think was $550 according to MLS Players. So and once again, agreeing to a new contract, obviously key to this, that Ferreira would agree to a new deal in Seattle, and it's pending approval and paperwork according to Tom Bogert. How does this make Seattle better? We'll get to adding Arriola, down the line here as topic section 3. I feel like it's a 5-paragraph essay that we're dealing with here. But how does this make Seattle better, losing a Leo Chu, sending Leo Chu to Dallas, bringing in a Jesus Ferreira, and having Rusnák coming in over the line and possibly adding a Paul Arriola?
There are many ways, and it's not necessarily easy to understand if you're not very familiar with the intricacies of what's going on in Seattle, right? So let me start by saying that Leo Chu, unfortunately for Seattle, he was checked out. He was not going to be able to get back from the basement that he was put on at the end of 2024. I asked Brian Spencer directly, how do you get back a guy like Leo Chu that you didn't just relegate to the bench, but you relegated him to the stands for the end of the season? And he mentioned, yeah, there's things, I have high hopes, all these things. The very political type of answer that you would expect from any head coach not trying to shake the boat a little bit. But the reality was that his confidence, his desire to play for the club was shot. I'm not going to blame just the situation. I think that Leo Chu did have some inconsistencies in his game. There was a questioning of his effort and his defensive abilities and playing for the system. So when you think about a player that ultimately was a bust for Seattle, your first U22 ever was a bust, and you're able to move him in a deal where, and I want to put this into context very well now that I can, because Jeremiah O'Shan already let the cat out of the bag in terms of why Jordan Morris is going to be a designated player in 2025. It really limited Seattle's ability, because you were already going to bring back Albert as a DP. You already had Pedro de la Vega as a DP,
Yep.
and now you were in one way or another obligated to bring back Jordan Morris as a DP in 2025. That left you no room to go get any big player. So now, with how you were able to package deal this move for Ferreira by doing the GAM, the international slot, and Leo Chu, now you get a guy that he's the youngest player in league history to get 50 goals, who's 24, who has potential to be a top 10 forward in this league because he has the potential to do so. He's done it before. So that's where the move goes into, and why is such a good move. How does he make the team better? Because Leo was a non-factor. Leo was a non-factor last year at the end of the day, and I hate to say it because I like the guy, and I think that there were splashes of really good moments for him in his Seattle career, but it just wasn't consistent. So when you get rid of a guy that was taking a big piece of your salary, you open up a U22 spot, and you get a guy like Ferreira that is versatile, can play right next to Jordan Morris, can play maybe a little bit farther back, can play out wide. You get a lot more options for a team that lack goals. I would like to say Ferreira is a better finisher than Jordan Morris. I mean, maybe that might not be in the evidence of the last 2 years, but whenever Ferreira was in his best moments, completely healthy, he was a guy that could finish. He was a guy that could create. He was a guy that could do a whole lot of things that Seattle did not have last season. So there, you're fixing some of the issues that you had last season. Plus, you're getting rid of a guy that was not going to be anything more than a void in your salary and in your U22 spot. So there's where the adding by subtraction thing goes in the long term. So that's the way that this team is better today than they were before, with this move, with Jesus Ferreira, and with the understanding again that if you don't give this package deal, you're probably not going to get a player close to what Jesus Ferreira is. Because look, I understand that he has not been the Jesus Ferreira of old, but the potential is there. Dallas has been a huge mess for the last 2 years. The Esteves thing fell apart halfway through the season. You had a new head coach. There was a whole bunch of problems in Dallas. So that's why his production went a little bit lower over the last couple of seasons. But at the end of the day, now you're getting a guy that is and people are going to hate this, but he is a national team player. He's a guy that's young. He's a guy that can do a lot of things. He's a versatile player. So that's why you're better today, and why I rate this move very high, understanding all the context behind why it was done.
And that's why we wanted to have you break it all down in three dimensions for us because of all of the moving parts that were associated with it. Ferreira, full compensation last year, a little over 2.204, 2,204,000. And then Paul Arriola, base salary last year, 1,550,000. Guaranteed compensation, $1,729,400. Where is Arriola in relation to the finish line? Where are we, and how would he fit into what you're thinking Seattle in 2025 is going to look like?
Yeah, so that got interesting, man. Look, it's kind of funny because I took like a week off, or at least 4 days off, really off of everything, and I tried to shut on the engines, although it was hard to do so. But but quite honestly, before I did that, things were in line, everything was working okay. I got a text the day before Tom broke this Leo Chu story, that there were some issues with some of the negotiations with Dallas. And one of them was about Arriola, because there was an agreement between both clubs that Dallas was going to take $1 million of their salary. And that made sense at the time. But as everything in this world, I have the right to change my mind. And Dallas was like, okay, man, this is costing us a lot of money. So there was a point where it almost falls. The move from Arriola to Seattle almost falls apart, because Dallas decided that it was a little bit too expensive on their end. Okay. So what I heard, and this is news, I don't think this is out there yet, Seattle and Dallas were able to reconstruct his contract, his deal, so that in one way or another, Dallas was paying less of what they initially thought they were going to have to take from Arriola, but by reconstructing his deal and essentially re-signing a new deal in Dallas before moving to Seattle, that's how they were able to get over the hump. And as far as I know, right now, everything is all good and well. Some minor details are still left to be put together. There's obviously a weight on Paul's signature to put it all through. But as far as I know, all the obstacles have been dealt with. All the I's have been dotted. The only thing that you're waiting for is a signature, league approval, and Arriola should be a Seattle Sounder.
All right. So now that you're back, amongst the living and back amongst the reporting, what's going on with Soccer Bar, Pulso Sports? Who's taking a breath? Who's not taking a breath? And I know that you're back at it. So what's going on?
Yeah, so Soccer Bar will not be going on today. We are still trying to get together for a production meeting for our first show of the year. We have some guys out of the country, of course, so we're going to get together, do that. Tomorrow, I will be doing some announcing on some shows that I'll be putting together for Pulso Sports. I'm going to start doing a open space every Friday from 3 to 4 in a segment that I'm going to call Let It Out Friday. Let It Out Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. here in Pacific Northwest. I'm going to have a segment about the Sounders every single time. I'm going to talk about MLS in general, but it's going to be a space where throughout this hour, fans can interact and they can let out whatever frustration they have about the team, the moves, the ownership, whatever it is that is in people's minds. They're going to be able to let it out. I'm going to hear them out. As long as everybody keeps it PG and nobody gets too crazy, I'm going to continue to do so. Then I'm going to grab that audio. I'm going to put it on Pulso Sports, and I'm going to see how that works out. So that's going to be one of the things that I'll be working tomorrow, is to announce some of those new segments that we'll be putting together. But just excited about what's going to be happening here with the Sounders. Since there is no Soccer Bar, I will let you know the following. For your audience that might not know, the reason why Jordan Morris, is now going to have to be a DP is specifically because there was some goals in his contract that if he was to reach them, was going to put him at a certain number. The number puts him above the DP threshold, and that's why Jordan Morris now is going to be a DP next season. I know people are not going to be thrilled about that, and you know, rightfully so. Sometimes you expect the local guy and your local talent to not take one of those DP spots, but that's going to be interesting. JP, who is signing a deal with the Sounders, a 1 year, one year option for 2026. That's a big move for Seattle. And I want to make this very clear, not only because of the experience and everything that he's brought in, but I've been kind of talking to some folks, and he sounds like there's a potential that Josh Atencio might be working in as a center back maybe this season, just to see how that works out. I expect this team to play a lot of 3-5-2, so it makes sense to maybe have Josh Atencio, who's a midfielder by trade over the last couple of seasons, maybe drop back a line. So those are going to be some of the things that we're going to be able to talk about here in Let It Out Fridays, starting tomorrow. So check that out. Puso Sports, of course. We're going to be back in business, if I'm not mistaken, at Soccer Bar by next week on Thursday, latest. So go ahead and check that out. I really appreciate it. It's great having you back on, John. I missed you. And hopefully your 2025 is as good as 2024 or better, of course. You got a lot of stuff going on down there in Atlanta. I'm excited for y'all. But thank you for having me, man.
As always, it's great to have you here, my friend, and you are a part of the SDH family, no doubt about it. And it's great to see you here on this side of the 2025 calendar. Be safe, be well, have a great weekend, and we're going to keep an eye on letting it out, and we will let it all out with you. We will see you next week, my friend.